Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever all of you are today. It's 11:28 in Missoula, Montana, and I am going to be talking a little bit about a telehealth-based intensive comprehensive aphasia program, or ICAP, this evening. My name is Cathy. I'm an associate professor at the University of Montana, and I am also the founder and co-director of the Big Sky Aphasia program with my colleague, Jenna Griffin. So we had already accepted a cohort of participants for our summer 2020 intensive comprehensive aphasia program this year when COVID hit. So we did not want to lose the opportunity to train our student clinicians, and we did not want to remove the opportunity for these participants to have engagement during the summer. So our first order of business really was to talk with the participants that we had accepted into the program. So this was 8 families living with aphasia, scattered around the US. And we asked them what they were interested in. We offered them the opportunity to do telehealth as individual sessions by themselves, kind of a more traditional telehealth model. We offered them the opportunity to do a blend of individual sessions and group sessions. And then we offered them the opportunity to go on an adventure with us and try out an intensive comprehensive aphasia program virtually. So we were not certain what the response would be. And unanimously, within moments of emails being sent out, everybody was on board and they all wanted to give it a go. So we were really excited that, that the folks who had signed up to be here in Missoula were willing to stay at home and give this a go for many hours a day, many days a week, for several weeks. So beginning in late March, mid to late March, my colleague Jenna and I began our brainstorming to start thinking about all of the logistics that, that we might have to deal with to make this fly. Fortunately, as I had mentioned, we had been providing some telehealth sessions throughout the regular academic year. We are at the University of Montana, so it's all clinical training with our students in a kind of more traditional aphasia program throughout the academic year. And we had been maybe serving 5 families per semester via telehealth. So we had some experience with the model, just not for so many hours a day and in a variety of different contexts. We also decided to write ethics approval through the university so that we could collect data during this program. So for those of you that might not know all the bits and pieces of an ICAP, I thought I would just kind of go over the essential components of an ICAP first so that you feel comfortable with what we're talking about. In 2013, Miranda Rose and colleagues published a paper that defined the essential components. And these include, it must be intensive, meaning that there's at least 3 hours of daily treatment over a period of at least 2 weeks. And that the program is comprehensive. So comprehensive meaning that there are a variety of treatment session types, individual sessions, group sessions, that technology-based approaches are infused throughout these types of sessions. The comprehensive component also refers to the idea that you're targeting not just the impairment, but the activity and participation restrictions as well, according to the WHO ICF. ICAP should also include patient or family caregiver education or family caregiver education. But one of the defining pieces of the ICAP, and I think one of the most important, is this idea of a cohort model. So all participants begin and end the program at the same time, and they are all engaging with each other for a confined, a specific amount of time during the ICAP. So just as an overview, we're going to get into the details in just a minute because I know those of you that are interested in ICAPs are really interested in the logistics right now and the implementation. So we have been offering this telehealth ICAP 5 hours per day, 3 days per week for 3 weeks. All of our individual sessions are high intensity with high dosage within each session, using individualized evidence-based treatment approaches with lots of salient targets and infusing as many principles of neuroplasticity as we can. We also meet to the criteria of comprehensive in that we are offering a variety of treatment session types that we'll talk about in just a minute, including individual and group sessions. All of our targets, all of our treatment sessions are targeting all levels of the WHO ICF, and our philosophies are grounded in the LPAA and family-centered care. We've been including both patient and family caregiver education and patient and caregiver wellness components to the program. And as I had mentioned before, we had a cohort of 8 families living with aphasia. So I thought I would introduce you to our team. We are in the middle of, or right at the end of this ICAP right now. Tomorrow will be our very last day of treatment. And so it's all very fresh to us, and important that I recognize the hard work of our student clinicians and all of the other folks that have been working on this team. So myself and Jenna Griffin co-lead this adventure. And we have a wonderful collaborator, Dr. Kirsten Murray, and her current doctoral student, Molly Murphy, who are licensed family counselors who provide some of the wellness components of our program. We have 8 student clinicians that you see here on this slide, and 8 families living with aphasia. Okay, so this next slide provides an overview of the timeline for the entire process of our ICAP. So we begin by introducing the idea of the ICAP to our student clinicians. They get introduced through a welcome email, and we send them several journal articles about ICAPs, including kind of the philosophy and the components and the research that backs up the model, and then direct them to some aphasia access video tutorials to start learning a little bit more about the LPAA. All of these student clinicians will have already taken the graduate level aphasia course and have had some preliminary introductions, but our job during this ICAP is really to increase their clinical skills in addition to their clinical knowledge. After we, so you can see kind of from April 20th to May 27th, we pushed written and online content to the students. And then beginning at the end of May, we began Zoom-based student orientation. And this was all synchronous learning. So we met for many hours a day to train our students in the same way we would do in person. We also gave them guided work time, kind of like working together as a writing retreat, right? Where you are logged in or you have been given set amount of time to go work and then come back and report in. We provide tutorials. And my colleague Jenna and I each provide, we lead one diagnostic assessment session each with one of our families so that the students get a direct observation of how to do telehealth evaluation. Right before the treatment begins, the students lead the remaining 6 patients through their diagnostic evaluations. And Jenna and I are providing 100% supervision for each one of those sessions. The ICAP then begins, and we began on June 9th. And as you can see, we're just finishing up tomorrow. And we will begin our post-ICAP assessment on Friday, Monday, and Tuesday of next week, and then have our final debriefings. Our weekly schedule looks a little different than it does when we are in person. So when we're in person, we often have overlapping sessions for our family caregivers and our participants living with aphasia. So we can't do that via Zoom because we can't guarantee that families have multiple devices to log into Zoom, and we didn't want to reduce their bandwidth and potentially harm individual treatment sessions or group sessions that were going on. So we had to spread out our week a little bit to incorporate this idea of family caregiver sessions as well. So what you see here is that on Mondays, our students are doing a lot of paperwork and prepping for the week, while our family caregiver counseling group is happening with Dr. Murray and her doctoral student. This is a group open to all the family caregivers or extended family caregivers for these families. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we host the ICAP treatment, and this runs from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And then on Fridays, we have a family caregiver education group that's run by our student clinicians. And then the second caregiver counseling group is led by Dr. Kirsten Murray, again, and her doctoral student. The rest of the day in the afternoon is spent, again, debriefing with students and prepping them for the next week. It's important for me to let those of you who are thinking about putting together something like this, that the day is not, the ICAP day is not just from 10 till 4 for all of us. So immediately before the ICAP and for about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the ICAP, we're debriefing with the students, helping them make good decisions about the treatments they're going to implement, working on organization, and working through some of, kind of the traditional clinical documentation processes that happen. So how do we offer a variety of session types for this ICAP? We have a variety of individual, large group, and small group sessions. So the individual sessions are one clinician with one person living with aphasia. These are high intensity evidence-based sessions with lots of within session practice and a cross session practice. We also offer a number of large group sessions where the entire cohort of 8 people and their clinicians and the directors and supervisors come together. And so for us, this was 18 of us this summer. And we have a variety of large group sessions. Every day, we have an opening and closing session to introduce the day, give everybody a chance to say hello, overview what's coming up for the week, and talk about the variety of conversation groups that might be happening during the day. Once a week, we offer aphasia clubs where participants have the opportunity to choose between 2 types of sessions based on their personal interests. So for example, today we had a photography club and a music club to choose from. Once a week, we also offer an interprofessional aphasia community group. This is the first time we've run this session, and this was a collaboration between the doctoral counseling student and one of our graduate student clinicians. Their job was to develop and implement a aphasia community group that focused on education and wellness. We also offer some sort of community engagement experience. So our first week, we offered a guest speaker who was a wildlife biologist who spoke about birds and bird calls and engaged the group in conversation about birding. Our second community engagement opportunity was a live virtual tour of the Missoula Art Museum. So we've had a long-standing collaboration with the Art Museum and have worked with the Art Museum to develop aphasia-friendly manners of giving us great tours of the current exhibits. And so we were able to do that virtually this year. We also offer small conversation groups or small narrative groups. So during the conversation groups, you would have 2 patients and 2 student clinicians. Same for the narrative groups. The focus is just a little bit different. So conversation groups, truly the focus is on establishing strong conversational skills, working on all sorts of topics that are of interest to the person, to the small groups themselves. And then the narrative groups were more focused on developing personal stories about areas of interest that we had identified at the start of the ICAP. Oops. So I thought that folks might be interested just to see how this ICAP varied from our traditional in-person ICAP. So our in-person ICAP has been 4 weeks. We decided on 3 weeks for the telehealth ICAP. There were some logistics because of the COVID changes that reduced our window of opportunity to have student clinicians. But also we were a little bit worried about the long hours and duration of being on Zoom. We offer 4 days a week of services during the in-person ICAP, and we reduced that as well to 3 for the same reasons. We were a little concerned that 4 days in a row sitting in a chair would burn people out and that the engagement would drop. So you can see that in person, we did not have quite as long of a day, and so we extended that day for the telehealth ICAP because of the shorter days per week and number of weeks. So the difference here is the difference of 72 hours of intervention versus 45 hours of intervention for the telehealth ICAP. And you can see the breakdown of the individual sessions, small group sessions, and large group sessions here across the 3 weeks of the telehealth ICAP. So running a program like this requires a lot of organizational and logistic attention. So we problem solved for a long time how we would go about making sure that everybody could get into Zoom regularly every day. We couldn't use a single Zoom link because we offered, we have 2 clinical supervisors that need to supervise their students. And we needed to make sure that we had a good number of folks in each group. And so what we ended up doing is emailing participants the night before each day of the ICAP with a aphasia-friendly schedule and Zoom link that was in a table format, and they could just click the hyperlink to the session that they needed to join at the time of day that they needed to join it. So this table is an example of what we might send home the night before. We also made sure to rename the links so that it was not just a long string of numbers and letters that often caused confusion or made it that they would click the wrong link even if it was lined up in a table. From a clinical supervision standpoint, I think this is an important piece, is how Jenna and I manage 8 families. So Jenna and I divide 8 families into 2 teams. So I'm responsible for 4 students and 4 families with aphasia, and Jenna's responsible for 4 and 4. When we would run sessions, we each had our own link, our own Zoom link, and then we would create 3 breakout rooms, so we would have 2 individual sessions in 2 separate breakout rooms, and then 1 other breakout room for a conversation or narrative group. So 3 sessions would be running simultaneously, and as supervisors, we would be popping back and forth between these breakout rooms about every 20 minutes or so. So one of the things that I was most concerned about when we first started brainstorming this idea of a telehealth ICAP was that I love hanging out with all of our families for 4 weeks. I love getting to know people, and I love watching all of our families get to know each other to create relationships and bonds that they take with them even when they leave Missoula. And I was really worried that we weren't going to be able to achieve this through the telehealth model. So I can share some of the tips that we've learned for creating relationships rapidly on Zoom. So unlike many aphasia groups that were in existence before COVID who moved to a telehealth model, none of these families knew each other. So everybody was new. So we were really focused on making sure that we could provide some sort of cohesion. So some of the ways that we did that was that these opening and closing groups were really essential to allow folks, excuse me, a few minutes of impromptu mingling, right? So we we wouldn't interfere and folks would be able to say hello to each other. Sometimes music would be playing and they'd be, excuse me, singing or dancing. We also ensure that during any large group sessions that we allow and encourage all of our participants to share. So nobody's getting off the hook, right? Everybody gets to share or respond to prompts or conversational starters each day. And all of this builds kind of this relationship between each other. And really by day 2, all of our participants were really excited to be asking each other how they were doing, what they worked on each day, and encouraging each other. We also encourage participants to share personal items, give some tours of their home office, so to speak, and drop in and introduce any drop-in friends that might be coming over to the house. The other idea here is really to vary this type of large group session. So one of the things that has been really interesting is that just by offering different types of large group sessions, the difference in content changes the way people get to know each other. And so having the community engagement opportunities and then the weekly interprofessional aphasia group both fostered relationships and openness that was not expected by me as we kind of got started with this experience. We also allowed folks the opportunity to share their screen if they felt comfortable doing so. So lots of opportunities for sharing things that they wanted to from their own home computers. One of the things that was really wonderful about the interprofessional aphasia community group is the idea that this is a safe space for conversations. For our small groups, we varied the types of these small groups, right? So we had both conversation and narrative development groups, and we always alternated small group sessions with individual sessions throughout the day to break things up. Too long of sessions leads to burnout in social conversation, and so we found that just short little moments of break between session types was enough to kind of reset and recharge everybody. We also like to mix up the conversational partners every day across these small group sessions. So while for the first day, maybe day and a half, we kept the conversation groups the same just to create some feeling of comfort for everybody. The cohort all said that they were wanting to get to know each other, and so we started to mix up the conversational groups and the narrative groups right away. And this was just wonderful. They would ask each other new questions each time and really infuse kind of some personal relationship building strategies on their own without even our direction. We also try to encourage leadership and active participation during these small group sessions. So sometimes we might encourage one of the participants to read the clues for a trivia game, for example, or talk to us about photography tips, for example, in today's session, because we had a professional photographer in our cohort. A number of technical features on Zoom can really help set the tone. So I think one of the things that Jenna and I talk a lot about in terms of hosting a great ICAP is being a good host. So what can you do on Zoom to make things feel cozy and welcoming and warm? We played around with this quite a bit the last 3 weeks. So one of the things we do is we use the waiting room for all sessions. And this allows us as a cohort of clinicians to get together first, double check that we're all on the same page for the particular session, and welcome each participant one by one into the Zoom room. This feeling of welcomeness and entry into the session has been really a wonderful thing, and allows then each subsequent participant to say hello to each other as well and not feel quite so overwhelmed by all the tiles on the screen as they are entering the Zoom room. We've also gotten quite good at playing music through Spotify or Pandora through the streaming feature, as long as you optimize your sound feature. We also have moved into, this took us a few days to get used to, but we started muting the participants when we asked them a prompt and gave them time to think about their answer before responding. We tend to not call on people out of the blue until we've kind of gone through everybody. So we give everybody their turn, and we found that while they're thinking of their responses, sometimes the background noise or other family members popping in is distracting for folks to be thinking about their responses or writing down their responses, or however it is that they're coming to be able to share in our group. So muting is a really great feature through Zoom to allow this. As I mentioned before, we also allow participants to have the ability to share the screen if they feel comfortable doing that. We also encourage the use of remote control for some of our participants, actually for most of our participants. There's just a few, I think one of the 8 individuals this summer who was unable to use the remote control because of some limb apraxia that was interfering with accurate mouse use. So, you know, if we were in person, we'd be working on that quite a bit, but didn't have that opportunity through Zoom. We also have found that every day or so we have something new that needs to be taught about Zoom, and so we just keep creating aphasia-friendly Zoom tutorials as needed. You can see on this screen just a very small example of one piece of a information tutorial on how to enter breakout rooms, because we do those every day, many times per day. And lastly, like a good host, we stay in the rooms until all the participants have left and made it to their next Zoom location, just to ensure that nobody gets lost or feels lost while the sessions are shifting. So what do we think about this move to the telehealth ICAP? I'm going to talk just for a second about patient-directed and then also about our family caregiver services. I requested some information from our family counselor so that she could share her preliminary feelings as well. We are amazingly surprised at how fast everybody got on board with Zoom. Not a single participant has been chronically late. The timeliness, you know, folks are logging in 10 minutes ahead, getting ready, getting their offices set up each day, and the engagement is completely 100% engaged by all of our participants. We had tech issues the first week, and I mean the normal stuff here, people not getting into the right Zoom link. We modified our aphasia-friendly Zoom link documents after week 1. But really by the end of week 1, everyone was solid and we haven't had any trouble since. Our students, and I think that this is really complementary to the discussion that had happened just before me about the aphasia choirs, our student clinicians are phenomenal, and they excelled at creating salient digital materials and then using the internet during the various sessions as an extension of their clinical delivery to come up with you know, meaningful responses or meaningful questions during conversation groups for all of the participants. Our groups told us they were friends by the end of day 2. So I don't know how all of this cohesion happened so quickly. Some thoughts for me are that they had all committed to this particular adventure and were really prepared to be in this kind of group already. Also, I think COVID is a real factor here. So all of our participants, you know, had been isolated for about 3 months. Some of them had only just started to go back to some telehealth, PT, OT, speech sorts of experiences. And I think they were all ready to have regular interaction with new people. So I think that I was surprised that we were able to build these relationships so quickly. even though we didn't have as many social opportunities as we do in person. We still wish we were in person. We love what's happening during the telehealth ICAP, but collectively, we all agree that it is much more fun to be with each other and share space. One of the issues that I think we will be spending some time thinking about is how to talk with caregivers a little bit more thoroughly before the program starts. Just about how much help or not, or lack of support that they're providing during sessions. So some family members want to be there all the time in the right next to the participant, which sometimes isn't ideal, and others we wish we had a little bit more support. So I think we have some work to do there. As I mentioned, there's not the room for kind of this spontaneous engagement in social activities outside of the ICAP when we're on telehealth. So in person, we know that our families hang out and have dinner together. They might go for an adventure in Montana together, and they're not able to do that through the telehealth model. And I think that there's got to be a bit of an impact there. Our family caregiver wanted me to share that establishing confidentiality of the group is a little harder with folks being at home. So just ensuring that they're private, that there's nobody else in the room, that sort of thing. They also have found that it's a little more challenging to confirm who's paying attention when you have kind of the tiles on the screen as opposed to having people in a room. And use of body language is something that family counselors use a lot of to facilitate groups and to arrange groups as they're moving through very difficult emotional and well-being issues. And they have had to rely much more on verbal communication. They were surprised as well, though, at the intimacy that was achieved of the group members after only 2 sessions. And that the caregivers seem to demonstrate more emotional risk-taking at a quicker pace during the telehealth ICAP than the in-person ICAP. We do think, sorry, I'm going to back up just a little bit to that patient-directed services. We do also think that it is a little more challenging to advocate for some of our participants who are more severely impaired, so have less verbal production, for example, than others through telehealth. Not saying that we're not able to help them respond, but there is a little bit more of a challenge in large group settings than there is when you're in person. So what might we do differently if we, I'm assuming that at some point we're going to need to do this again. We will most definitely recruit a tech volunteer or tech intern to manage behind the scenes Zoom login problems or Zoom difficulties. So although we did not have very many, when they did happen, it was very challenging for Jenna and I as supervisors to also be trying to direct families to use Zoom properly or to find the correct link. We would just love to have a point of contact for people during the ICAP. And by popular demand of all of our participants, we would return the treatment to the intensity of our in-person ICAP. They have all complained that they wanted 4 days per week for 4 weeks, and they would, it does not matter at all that they're sitting in Zoom. It's the work that they want and the connections with each other that they want. After a few recommendations actually today, we would also add a longer lunch break. I think the tech-free time is necessary, and we've been finding that many of our participants use this time to take a bit of a rest and not just eat lunch, so have a bit of a nap. And I think this is different than in person because of the just the computer fatigue. We will later talk about research outcomes, I hope, after this program ends. So we're coming up on the end tomorrow, and we've been collecting a whole host of information during the ICAP that, that we'll be excited to share soon. Just 3 last tips as you're thinking about moving to a telehealth ICAP model. You absolutely need to assess the family's use of Zoom prior to the ICAP and determine what the person with aphasia can and cannot do with online support, right? Without somebody sitting next to them. We love having family caregiver support, but we want the person with aphasia to be independent and have time to themselves to do their hard work. And so what do they need at home, and what can they do on their own? And we spent a little bit of time doing this, and I think we have some ideas of how we would do just a little bit more the next time we ran something like this. Absolutely, laptop computers are essential, or computers are essential, not just iPads or smartphones. We counseled a couple families out of the iPad because of the screen sharing capabilities and just being able to have your hands a little bit more free during all of the long day of sessions. For clinical providers, a second monitor is absolutely essential for being able to manage all of the digital content. Also, you really shouldn't be running 2 sessions. So a family caregiver and a person with aphasia should not be in a session at the same time because of the reduced bandwidth and because of the often lack of multiple devices in a household. So really be thoughtful about making sure that there's no overlapping Zoom sessions. And then make sure you know whatever telehealth regulations you have for your region or healthcare context. So that is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so very much. And I'm happy to take a question or two.